Hello and welcome to Decorating Pages podcast. I am Kim Wannop, your host. I hope you are having a lovely February and not completely snowed in back east. I was back east last week and in between these storms, and it was still so icy and just a lot of snow for my kids to shovel, which apparently they love doing. And my brother was like, "Where were you when I needed you?" But they got a taste of snow, which was nice, and traveling and caught up on some documentaries and TV watching on the plane. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Besides, we are knee deep into award season. I mean, seriously, the BAFTA Awards just this past Sunday, the ADG Awards this Sunday, and voting is still open until tomorrow for the Art Directors Guild Awards. The Oscar voting starts on Thursday and ends March 5th. And in this episode, I'm going to break down the 5 Oscar production design nominees. But first, let's quickly let's quickly go over the BAFTA Awards winner for production design, Frankenstein, which I'm going to have to say is, I think, my favorite of the year. I know I'm putting it out there early in this episode, and I've said it many times, but there's actually, I don't think the listeners of this podcast agree with me. I don't know. We'll see. And we'll see how that goes with when they announce the voters. But I was surprised there is another contender who gave Frankenstein a run for their money for downloads and listens, I gotta say. So I was surprised by it, but then when I put my logic to it, not really. So I'll get into that a little later. One Battle After Another picks up 6 wins. Sinners picks up 3. One Battle After Another won Best Picture, and Hamnet won Best English Film. So yeah, so that was just this past weekend. And then this upcoming weekend, Art Directors Guild Awards. And guess who's going to be there? Me and you, because I will be live on the red carpet on my Decorating Pages YouTube channel. So go over to the channel and you hit like live, upcoming events, and notify me, and then it'll notify you when I go live for the ADG Awards, 5 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, February 28th, this Saturday. The link is also in the email that went out with today's episode. So either way, you have some links, and it's on the IG post. So go do that if you'd like. I would love for you to join me and watch me probably fumble a lot of names as per usual. All right, what Wannop is watching. I threw on Ed Wood the other night because I love it. I love that movie, and I constantly just look at it and marvel of how old Hollywood kind of sparseness, but this genuine look of how movies used to be, like the low budget movies used to be made. It's really fascinating. I mean, production designer Tom Duffeld and set decorator Cricket Holland, no, not at all. Cricket Rowland and Bruce Robert Hill are credited. Sorry. And it's just, I don't know. I could put it on anytime. Here's actually something that I've been thinking about. You know how you say to yourself, God, anytime that's on, I just got to watch it. Anytime that's on, I throw it on. For me, if Goonies is on, I'll watch it. If Reversal of Fortune is on, I'm watching it. Don't ask me why. But because of how, I don't have cable, because of how our TVs work now, I can't just, nothing's just on. You have to start it from the beginning. And I don't really want to start Reversal of Fortune from the beginning. I just want to jump in, catch some scenes and jump out. And I don't know. So I was thinking about that. Do you have that experience too, where you just are like, oh, I don't really pop into those movies, and I would watch that right now if it was on, type thing? Anyway, that's what I was thinking about this weekend. I stumbled into a show on Netflix called Forever about 2 high schoolers in Los Angeles navigating their first love. And it's LA for LA, which we need to support. And it's I thought, oh, this is going to be juvenile, but the writing is actually pretty good, and it kept me interested. The actors are really good. They're the sets by Suzuki in Ingrasliv, which I will. She's gonna kill me. And Ron Franco, it's decorating awesomeness. They're very layered. They're very in tune with teenage look and LA and being LA and not pretending what LA should be. So it is a good reference for modern day LA forever on Netflix. I also thought that I could hold out till all of The Pit was released, and I was wrong. I had to watch it. I had to. It's amazing, and I couldn't wait any longer. Production designer Nina Ruschio and set decorator Matt Callahan. I love The Pit. I loved ER. I've said it before. I watched every episode. This is basically John Carter, and I'm not going to deny that I'm still in love with Noah Wyle from however many years ago that was. And The Pit is great. The storylines are great. The acting is great. The constant, hyper, catching your breath is there, and really still stellar in its second season. So I've watched 7 episodes. Now I'm going to wait, and I'll try to binge the rest. I don't want to do week by week. It's too much. I want to binge it all. I love it. So yeah, but then it's over. When you binge shit, then it's over, and you're like, oh, I don't have anything to watch. That's at least how I get. All right, let's get into today's episode. And this is really, my Oscar predictions and a breakdown of all of the 5 nominated films. And this is really for you, the people who are squinting at the smalls on the tables and the tassels on the drapery. Because the 2026 Oscar nominations for production design are stacked. How did a human crew build this while eating lunch and answering emails? How do we get this done in this modern day with all of the other things going on and all of the mandatory things that we have to do as department heads and locations on either sides of the world, feels like. But yes, these crews got it done, and I am so happy that they are acknowledged for their efforts. So I am breaking down locations, palettes, lighting choices, textures, scale, and tiny little decisions that make these the most recognized design films of the year. And yes, I've told you Frankenstein is my prediction, but the podcast downloads say something else. I'm going to get to that. So yeah. The nominated films are Frankenstein with production designer Tamara Deverell and set decorator Shane View, Hamnet with production designer Fiona Crombie and set decorator Alice Fenton, Marty Supreme, production designer Jack Fisk, set decorator Adam Willis, One Battle After Another, production designer Francia Martin and set decorator Anthony Carlino, and Sinners, production designer Hannah Beechler and set decorator Monique Champagne. Now you can listen to full episodes, watch full episodes on YouTube for Frankenstein, Hamnet, and Sinners. I was very lucky to speak to those creative teams over the past couple months. So, as I said, we're going to get into story development, in design, texture, lighting, and my favorite little details. So let's start with Frankenstein. Tamara Deverell and set decorator Shane View. This is a really big swing in production design. It's gothic. It's not themey. It's like a beautiful world that's been abandoned and aged, but you're seeing it being built, and then you're in the country and you're on a ship, and it's fanciful and grotesque at the same time. I mean, Victor's apartment is phenomenal. The details in that we'll get into. So the sets vary from like a crazy scientific lab to this intricate apartment of the scientist. And there's just so many details, including the shafts of light that were designed to bring in to highlight all of these. She goes into that in our interview. A key anchor, I would say, in Victor's lab is the abandoned multiple water tower on the edge of a cliff. I mean, they brought that from concept to reality in their designs. And the production shot across Canada in Toronto for some studio work. They were in the UK, Scotland, and that influenced some of the sets. Visual inspiration from the Wallace Tower in Scotland. And when I had the interview with Tamara, she talks about how the lab concept evolved while they were still scouting and deciding whether to build or find the lab. And then the water tower idea just locked in for them. I had asked her about that big hole in the floor, you know, the caves in the bottom where they keep the creature, and the builds of those arches into columns that had to be moved quickly for camera. We get into a lot of the really technical aspects of building a world like that in the interview. It's a very controlled palette in this movie. It's a lot of stone and marble and mineral tones and monochromatic. The structures really catch the light without like it being on fire. Tamara mentioned building a major sculptural focal point that stayed monochromatic specifically so it didn't overpower the actors, but still captured the mood. And that's the tunnels that I just spoke about. There are definitely some signature science moments that we all know. And a real key was, I've never read Frankenstein, and she was telling me in her research and reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, there's never really a description of the creature coming alive. And so that's kind of, built from the Universal movies and further on. And so it's when you know that if you follow the book that never has that detail, it's really anything you want it to be. And the lab that they created with the giant electrical towers and the pedestal that they put him on, and it's so beautiful in a sense, and the greens that they bring into that scene is so beautiful. There's a lot of emphasis on dramatic lighting and single source feeling with candlelight. As I said, the window-based shafts, that kind of controlled gloom in the film, especially when he's in the shed where there are all of these cogs and these wheels around him, and how the light hits the creature at times is really beautifully done. And we talked a lot about problem solving in the interview, building spaces that work with this lighting instead of being, like dead objects, if you will. Everything seemed very alive. So the lab signature iconography is the circular windows, this monumental relief elements that are designed in, and an aged mosaic in the back of the room, which is gorgeous. Those battery towers, they're practical. They lit up. She talks about the amount of time and effort that had to go into with lighting and then with special effects, and just an enormous amount of work. I didn't even get to the ship yet. I mean, they built a real ship. Basically. And then, VFX helped with the extensions. They built tons of ice pieces because the ship is lodged into ice. It's an amazing feat of what they got to build for this film. And I think it's just beautiful. I think it's a wonderful combination of fantasy and period. And to me, that's just a beautiful push of production design for our year, to show how the visual effects and the practical sets and the lighting all come together to make this beautiful film. It's really pretty engineering. It's not just that, but the scale builds, the miniatures they had, scenic matching, the weather they had to deal with. I just love it. I just love this film. I could watch it again right now. So Frankenstein is your one of your picks for best production design. The second film I'll probably never watch again, and not because it was bad, because it's so good and such a gut check. I can never watch Hamnet again. It was acted so perfectly and so poignantly perfect of a mother's reaction to a death of her child that I just could never do it again. And I told them that when I spoke to production designer Fiona Crombie and set decorator Alice Fenton. Could not have been nicer. Sweet, sweet, sweet. And I think in the middle of the interview, I started to choke up a little and I felt bad about that. But Hamnet is the opposite of Frankenstein in scale, but it's just as hard. Hamnet builds a version of Shakespeare's world that feels handmade and imperfect and not like a museum, not like a period piece. It feels like you're really stepping back in time. In the interview, they talked about starting with locations and being, thought of like we're going to have locations. And then they ended up building and designing very efficiently because they scouted so many real references that it lended so much to the realism of their builds. And there's mention extremely of making the details so real, the woods and the materials that really would have been used in the builds, in actual builds. I mean, getting to build the Globe Theater in its state in that time is amazing. And the amount of detail that they did in the backstage, which we talked about, wasn't seen a lot on film. If you get a chance to watch the video that we talk on YouTube of this, or if you go to the ADG site under awards and look at the nominees' portfolios that they presented, there are so many pictures of the details of the backstage of the Globe Theater. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful set. They explicitly discuss the palette of their story of the red period into the blue period. And red ties into this earthly life and warmth, and the blue hits with the grief. And it's coordinated through costumes and shift of light and the dressing. Alice talked about the dyeing of and aging of the fabrics, because there are many close-ups of sheets and their textiles that they're using and how they were handmade for them and stitching them. So it's an amazing thing to be able to not like find these pieces, because that's great too, but then to have craftsmen that can make these. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I'm sure that the quality of it was amazing. For lighting, there's really great moments with candles and the solitary flames of him writing at his desk, and also, the grief part next to the fire at night. And there's really some wonderful lighting moments in this that are soft and natural, and shadow-friendly rooms with surfaces that hold their depth. And you still see the paint and the texture in the fabric just from that source. I spoke to her about the etchings on the walls that mimic like a wallpaper, and asked her about those patterns and where she found them from reference, and did that throughout one of the builds of locations. I was overjoyed that they built the home with very low ceilings, because I really thought it was a location, because that's usually a tell that ceilings are high. Beams were intentionally lower and buckling, so because places settle and they become, unperfect. The 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 use of furniture also in this film is very key. In the houses there was a choice to use seating with like no backs so that you'd be able to see through the home, or the dressing of the bedrooms, and then the two beds and then there's one with the child dying. So it's it's a lot about furniture in this in this film. They move into that attic space, which was a build, and how the color tone changes from the beginning of the relationship to the end. So there's so much going on in this film design wise that it's no wonder it's nominated, and a fan favorite, I would say. So a beautiful, beautiful film, period. And yeah, that is Hamnet. So Sinners, another period film. Production designer Hannah Beachler and set decorator Monique Champagne. Sinners is a design as a myth. It's grounded in period authenticity, but it's also a horror film. So you have that back and forth with this story, but you're keeping this Jim Crow era Mississippi Delta design and feel. When Hannah spoke about the locations and trying to find these locations and then building on them, and how important it was to be authentic to what the time period really was. They built the juke joint, which is the main set in the film, I would say, and the church also they built, which is in the beginning and end of the film. Hannah really laid out a lot of what color had to be in the film with the reds and the blues again. And it's not just pretty, they're emotional states, they're moral zones, they're character physics. When they are outside and the vampires are there, it's this blue lighting and this one moon source. But when they're when they're inside of the juke joint, and the red tones and human flesh is all around and people are dancing and having a good time, it's a warm, good feeling. The design lends to that also, with the stage, with the pattern of the wood in the background, and building it all with real wood, and dancing on those floors, building a real second floor where a lot of the fight scenes are. So they did a lot of building. That when they're in the town, and they made the town all period, and this general store that they had to go into. I talked to Monique about, oh my God, period labels and finding all of these products and in period time. And it's a lot. And every detail is there. Every detail just lends to this story so eloquently. It's a beautiful design. The juke joint is a character with texture and density. The church is such a symbol that they made, and she talks about having it. I wanted it white. I wanted it to be stark white. They go into the discipline of not overdressing, being brave with negative space. That's huge. And texture and paint doing the storytelling, the aging, the amount of aging they had to put into the juke joint. And you're also, she's also building a moat with that had alligators in it. They built they extended it out, but the real moat had alligators. Talks about that too. That's crazy. It's a wonderful exploration of the South at that time, and the culture of, building up a juke joint in the middle of town. And then this integration of a horror film. It's such a good film. I've seen it at least twice. I am happy for all of their nominations. I believe Best Supporting Actress, Screenplay, and Music, I believe, were won at BAFTA this past weekend. So It's a good choice. These are all good choices. All five. They're very good choices. Next up, we have Marty Supreme. Marty Supreme, production designer, legendary legend Jack Fisk, set decoration by Adam Willis. And Marty Supreme is one of those nominees that doesn't scream like, look at my set. It just quietly grabs you by the collar and says, you are in 1950s New York now. This is the real thing. And the reason it works is that Jack Fisk's whole philosophy is nothing pristine, nothing cute, and absolutely nothing that looks like a period piece that just got steamed. Like nothing. He doesn't want something new. They want older things that would be appropriate. So, you know, when on all of these films, when you have that budget or luxury and time, awesome. And they deserve it. I mean, if you're putting this much effort into these films, the design deserves the time and the quality to produce this for them. The movie is a boy chasing a dream of being a tabletop tennis or ping pong player. And Marty is the main character. He's in the Lower East Side streets. He's in a tenement interiors. There's midtown basements, fancy upper class Manhattan spaces, rural Jersey. That's a kicker. And even international. They go to London. They go to Tokyo. So there's a lot of different elements into this period film. A huge chunk of the characters' lives are in the Lower East Side on Orchard Street. But the problem is 1950s Orchard Street is not 2026 Orchard Street. So Jack Fisk and his team did what they do. They cheated politely and aggressively and made it a beautiful period piece in the streets. They found old storefronts that became the shoe shop, fixed it up, and then, had to deal with modernism trying to creep in with a new hotel right next door, I read. The solve was a genius thing, was we do this for a living, and they built a modular storefront, a low building pieces that could sit on the sidewalk and block the modern buildings without touching it. So I am sure we got this great location, but you can't touch this. You can't do this. And as the art department, as set decorating departments, we work our magic. And they built complete fronts for these stores without touching the existing buildings. That's awesome. The tenement is a great detail. They couldn't find, you can't really find a real tenement anymore because they've all been redone. They're charging, $8,000 for a half of an apartment in New York. And if it's been modernized and chopped up into, apartments. So instead they built it, and they built the apartments and the hallways, but it's grounded in real research, including a department field trip to the Tenement Museum. They all went there to look at layouts and finishes. This is all part of our research, which is so fantastic. He gives a detail in one of his interviews about why tenement walls can be bright, which, thinking of the film, it seems kind of monotone, but there are pieces that pop out. So coal heating left grime and dark dust, so people used brighter paints to fight that gloom. That's the kind of detail that makes these sets feel socially true and not just visually correct. And those are the things, as being a designer and a decorator, are like, you champion for these things. It has to be this. This is what the research calls for. This is the details that we're going for. The table tennis club was a real place, but it's gone. So they rebuilt it using old photographs and blueprints. And they really did such a good job in giving it life. I mean, there's a lot of people in these scenes playing the game and walking around, and tons of pictures on the wall. It's very layered, and you got some atmosphere in there. It's great. They also moved to London for the championships, and they used the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey, laid down a massive wooden floor and hundreds of plywood sheets, and built dozens of ping pong tables. So who knew you'd be a ping pong expert? Those are one of the things you never know what you're going to be an expert in. So what makes all of this sing isn't just the dressing, it's the selections. Fisk talks about researching that includes street photography and personal journals from that era. I mean, you're really deep diving into research when you're reading journals. That's what I would say. Nothing in this film, in a good way, stands out to me. It just seems real. It just seems like they filmed it at that time. It feels like I'm watching Marty. I mean, I don't know if that was a reference for him, but I recently watched that also. And that is a great, I think it's 1953 or 51, Marty with Ernest Borgnine. Such a great reference for period New York. And they're walking in the streets and all that. So research, obviously, and making sure that these details are correct gives this film this nomination. So if Frankenstein is like the holy shit, they built that, Marty Supreme is the like, holy shit, they remembered to put that detail in, I would say. So it's not like huge and flashy, but it's precise. It's a precise period film. So bravo for that nomination. Our last one is One Battle After Another, with production designer Florencia Martin and set decorator Anthony Carlino. All right. Oops, hit my thing. One Battle After Another is, first of all, my pick for Best Picture. That would be me. I think Hamnet's a strong second in for the Oscars, but you never know. It's one of those nominees that you think, that looks like they just found it, and they're just like shooting at locations. Like, well, I don't get it. Why? Nope. It's all engineered. The design is doing that thing where the world feels really lived in. And it's funny, and it's unsettling, and it's weirdly specific. Like it existed before the camera showed up. And that's a beautiful thing, to be able to create realness in your story where there was nothing. There was blank locations, and you're being able to create these characters through their locations. Production designer Florencia Martin, in an interview, talks about keeping the time period intentionally vague, which is honestly a nightmare to pull off, because production design usually screams a year through tech and through cars. And in this film, they made daily choices which phones, which TVs, radios, and picture cars to use, down to like burner style phones and a TV that feels like it came from a thrift store. So not anything brand new, flat screen. And it doesn't date the film instantly. It's just that aesthetic, that character pieces that lend to the wonderful character design in this film. So I had read early on about all the locations they had and up and down California coast, scouting deserts, forests, cities, pulling together a collage of California spots, including El Paso, Texas, even going to other states. And that scouting wasn't just, like pretty postcards. They were people with stories. They were stopping and talking to people about locations and about living in these places, and listening to people, in the day-to-day of their lives, and trying to integrate that into your sets. That's an awesome thing to be able to do. One of the first big set pieces was an immigration detention camp under a highway near the California border. So they built it from the ground up. But here's the fun part. It was on an active Border Patrol road. So trucks were moving through the area while they were trying to create this world and filming. So this kind of logistical chaos, I would say, makes an art department age about 10 years in the 2 weeks they probably had there. So that's that's hard to do. Florencia says about the tunnels, because there's some tunnels in this film. Florencia says, tunnels followed us throughout the entire location of scouting. On a soundstage in LA, they built a 60-foot dirt tunnel for Bob, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, based on handheld cartel tunnels designs that they had found, designed to feel haphazardly and improved. But the tunnel opening is literally a plywood top under his bed, and they love the idea that Bob had an escape plan and that he basically forgot about it. So that's also a character piece. And then when Bob pops out on the other end, it's inside a redwood trunk. Now, that detail came from scouting in Eureka, where they saw versions of this in the wild. That's crazy. So, I also feel like one of the better sets in this that I think you kind of forget about is the Christmas Adventurers Club, which is very stark white. The curved tunnel that they walk down, it seems like a 5-minute scene of him walking down these tunnels leading into the Christmas Adventure Club, is tied to the Sacramento upper class home, specifically the former home of Ronald and Nancy Reagan. Crazy. While the tunnel itself was found elsewhere in Stockton, California, and then the final meeting room was a build. Martin describes leaning into this as a fancy logic space underground networks that have been in between houses and corridors and crazy moldings and artificial lighting that seems so weird, but it exists in people's basement. It's super weird. The mural that was hand painted, they went with taxidermy pheasants because it's hysterically on the nose, I would think. And there's all this like a meeting room is used dressing. Like they meet there pretty regularly, it seemed, in the dressing. Coat racks, hangers. There's a bar in there, a nice table to meet at. So, and apparently they carved Saint Nick into one of the archways. So that's a hell of a detail. I would say also when DiCaprio and Del Toro are walking through the apartments, which is kind of like another tunnel, the dressing throughout those spaces is so natural well, that's what it would be. This is somebody's home and they're hiding and it looks kind of junky, but they're using it and they're living there and then they just up and leave and yeah. So I would say One Battle After Another is a very behavioral ecosystem of design, like survival design in this film, modern day, well, we think, or contemporary design, but also really showing landscape in finding those hills for that chase scene, which is amazing. They had over 2 years to develop this film, so you feel the detail that went into finding these locations. All right, that's it. I talked enough. I hope that helps in any type of decision making you have. And as I said, I'm sticking with Frankenstein as my pick, but the one that people liked a little bit more is Hamnet. Boy, there was a lot of downloads for Hamnet. And that made me think, it kind of surprised me because I really thought Frankenstein's it. But obviously, there's so much great design out there. It doesn't surprise me that much. But then I started thinking about the history of Oscar, and I say all the time, I am constantly watching the movies that have been nominated for production design throughout since 1926, almost 100 years of films I've been trying to get through. And Oscar loves period. I gotta say it. I mean, you look at 1968, the movie the movie Oliver beat 2001. In 1980, Tess. Do you even know the movie Tess? It's a period film. Beat Empire Strikes Back. And even 1993, Howard's End won for Best Production Design over Toys. Now, those are just deep dive years that I actually have on the production design film study series that I did. But goes to show you that Oscar loves period films. Oscar people, they do. And remember that the peer group nominates those 5 films, but the whole Academy votes in every single category. I've been told that they have started to watch in pods, and because there's so many things to watch, that watching in pods and then discussing, and then you watch these 10 and I watch these 10, and then we discuss and blah blah blah, and they get it down, and narrowing it down. I'm sure for the second round it's a much easier process. You need to watch these films in order to vote on them, type thing. So I hope they put their design eyes on and really really look at the designs. I mean, they're all great. You can't go wrong, really. All right. Well, if you would like to deep dive into the interviews that I have with Frankenstein, Hamnet, and Sinners, you're in luck. They are available. They are episodes. I think Frankenstein was November, Sinners was December, and Hamnet was in January. And they are packed with details that really tell how all of these wonderful designs came together. If you are watching any of these films, again, do me a favor, watch them like a designer and pause and rewind and look at the corners and the smalls on the tables and what's hanging on the hooks. Those are the details that us decorators and then the designers just are in love with. That's why we're here, to do those details. All right, here we go. Thank you. I hope this helped in any way. And I, again, will be at the ADG Awards live on the red carpet this Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Check out the YouTube channel for that. Just hit that little notify me button, and I'm sure it'll pop up on your phone. You'll be like, oh my God, I gotta watch Kim. Fuck up. Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm really excited. I really like my dress. Let's put that out there. So yeah. It's a great award season. So there's so many great nominees, and especially with the ADG Awards, because it's not just 5. They have period, contemporary, fantasy. So, they kind of get it more right over there with, their categories. So, and TV. There's also TV going on in those awards. So many people, so much good design, and so many designers and decorators I'll get to talk to. I'm very excited. So yeah, I hope you check that out. Again, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sinners, all the clips are online. I bombard you with clips every day. I hope you're watching. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wannop for Decorating Pages.